Do cats sense death? Issy will leave you jaw-dropping. What if I told you there was an animal that could predict death with frightening accuracy? Which doctors and scientists have witnessed this phenomenon happening in an inexplicable way? It looks like something out of a horror movie, but it's real, and the protagonist of this story is a cat. That's right. We're not talking about ancient stories or baseless superstitions, but documented events witnessed by doctors, nurses, and family members around the world. The most famous case happened in 2007, when a cat named Oscar, living in a Rhode Island nursing home, made international headlines for a frightening reason. He seemed to predict patients' deaths with almost supernatural accuracy. But this case is not unique. There are numerous reports of cats demonstrating strange behaviors before a person's death. Some meow insistently for no apparent reason. Others refuse to leave someone's side, as if they were trying to comfort them in their last moments. Some say that cats have a sixth sense, an ability beyond our understanding. But is there a scientific explanation for this? Today, we're going to dive deeper into this mystery. You will hear chilling real stories and discover what science has to say about the possible ability of cats to sense death. Is it just a coincidence, or is there something bigger going on? And before we continue, tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed your cat acting strangely, as if it was feeling something that you couldn't perceive? Do they really see beyond what our eyes are capable of? I want to know your opinion. The case of Oscar, the cat at Steerhouse Nursing and Rehabilitation Center, is one of the most documented and impressive examples of this supposed feline ability to sense death. Since being adopted as a puppy from the hospital in Providence, Rhode Island in 2005, Oscar has demonstrated unusual behavior. He was not an especially sociable cat with patients or staff, rarely approaching people except in one very specific situation, when someone was about to die. The medical team began to notice a disturbing pattern. Oscar moved around the hospital every day, but on some occasions he would choose a particular patient and curl up next to him, refusing to leave. A few hours later, or at most the next day, the patient died. This happened not once, not twice, but dozens of times. When doctors realized that Oscar had correctly predicted more than 25 deaths, the phenomenon caught the attention of the press and the scientific community. The case was so extraordinary that it was published in New England Journal of Medicine. In 2007, with Dr. David Doser documenting the events in detail, Oscar's presence became a silent warning to the hospital staff. When he chose a patient and lay down next to him, the nurses already knew they should call family members, as the end was near. Some saw Oscar as an angel of death, while others believed he was a comfort to those in their last moments. But Oscar wasn't the only cat to demonstrate this strange behavior. In a small town in rural Ohio, in December 2014, a cat named Whiskers began acting unusually in the home of his owners, the Callahan family. For years, Whiskers was a calm cat who spent most of his time lying in front of the fireplace or exploring the yard. However, that week, something changed. He began following the family's grandmother, Margaret Callahan, around the house. He stared at her for long periods of time, meowed for no apparent reason, and refused to leave her room at night. Margaret, an 82-year-old woman, found the behavior strange, but didn't pay much attention. On the night of December 17th, Whiskers climbed into Margaret's bed and lay on her chest, something he never did. He remained there, motionless, all night. The next morning, when the family woke her up, Margaret had passed away peacefully in her sleep. It was then that they realized that somehow Whiskers seemed to have predicted what was about to happen. Similar cases have been recorded in different parts of the world. In Portland, Oregon, a woman named Jennifer Lawson reported a disturbing experience with her cat, Shadow. In 2019, Jennifer was caring for her sick father, Robert Lawson, who was battling late-stage cancer. For months, Shadow remained distant, as if avoiding the heavy atmosphere of the house. But in the last 48 hours of Robert's life, everything changed. Shadow refused to leave his room, hovered around the bed non-stop, and meowed in an insistent and melancholic way. The night before Robert passed away, Shadow lay down on his legs and remained there until his last breath. What impressed Jennifer most was that, at the exact time of her father's death, Shadow stared at the ceiling of the room and began to growl softly, as if he was seeing something that no one else could see. Jennifer, who has never been a superstitious person, confessed that that moment made her question whether cats were capable of seeing something beyond our understanding. But what would explain this behavior? Can cats really predict death? Or is there a scientific explanation for this? The fact is that in several reports, felines demonstrate similar behavior before someone's death. They become more attached, follow the person everywhere, meow incessantly, and, in the final moments, lie down next to them as if they were offering some type of comfort. Science has some theories that can explain this phenomenon. One of them is that cats have an extremely keen sense of smell, about 14 times more sensitive than that of humans. When a person is in their last moments, their body releases specific chemical compounds that may be imperceptible to us, but not to a cat. Additionally, they may notice changes in body temperature, another subtle sign that precedes death. This change in odor may be imperceptible to us, but not to cats, who have a highly sensitive olfactory organ called Jacobson's organ, located in the roof of the mouth. This organ allows them to analyze pheromones and other chemical compounds in the environment extremely precisely. The case of Oscar the cat at the Rhode Island hospital is an example that supports this theory. Terminally ill patients may emit a distinct odor due to metabolic changes that occur in the body shortly before death. Oscar, upon detecting this difference, instinctively approached these people, not because of a supernatural connection, but because of a biological response to the smell that only he could perceive. In addition to smell, another theory suggests that cats can sense changes in people's body temperatures. Just before death, blood circulation changes, resulting in colder skin or subtle changes in body temperature. As cats are extremely sensitive to heat, some scientists believe that they can sense these variations and instinctively approach people, seeking warmth or comfort. However, some people believe there is something beyond scientific explanation. Reports about cats sensing death have existed for centuries, and some cultures believe that they are spiritual guardians, capable of perceiving not only physical changes, but also energetic changes around people. This belief is rooted in history. In ancient Egypt, cats were revered as sacred beings, often associated with spiritual protection. In some Eastern traditions, they are considered messengers between the worlds of the living and the dead. Many people who have experienced strange behavior in their cats before a death believe that their cats see or feel something beyond what science can explain. There are cases of owners who say that their cats stare at a fixed point in the room, right after someone passes away, as if they were seeing something invisible to human eyes. Others say their cats began acting restless days before a family member's death, as if they already knew what was coming. This type of behavior is not exclusive to cats. Other animals also demonstrate impressive death perception abilities. Dogs, for example, are known for their incredible ability to detect disease. There are records of dogs that identify cancer by smell and that can predict epileptic seizures in their owners minutes before they happen. In hospitals and nursing homes, dogs often demonstrate behavior similar to Oscar's, refusing to leave patients' sides in their final moments. In addition to dogs, There are reports of birds that change their songs or become silent when someone close to them is about to die. Elephants are known to demonstrate mourning behaviors, visiting the remains of members of their group and touching the bones with their trunks, as if acknowledging the presence of death. But what makes cats particularly intriguing is their aura of mystery. They not only perceive physical and chemical changes in the environment, but they also exhibit behaviors that seem to go beyond the explainable. Are they just animals highly sensitive to biological changes in humans, or do they really have a sixth sense? The ancient Egyptians are perhaps the people best known for their worship of cats. In ancient Egypt, they were considered sacred and associated with the goddess Bastet, the deity of protection, fertility, and the home. Bastet was represented as a woman with a cat's head and was seen as a guardian against evil spirits. The Egyptians believed that cats had a special connection with the afterlife, being able to ward off negative energies and even predict imminent disasters. They were so respected that if someone killed a cat, even accidentally, they could be sentenced to death. Additionally, when a family cat died, owners would shave their eyebrows as a sign of mourning and perform rituals to guide the cat on its spiritual journey. But the Egyptians were not the only ones to attribute a mystical meaning to cats. In Japan, cats were also seen as spiritual beings. The figure of Maneki Neko, the famous paw-raising lucky cat, has deep roots in the belief that cats are protectors and can ward off evil. Furthermore, there is a Japanese legend that talks about from Bakken, cats that after living for many years would acquire supernatural abilities, being able to change shape, talk to humans, and even predict death. These cats were believed to be guardian spirits and, in some cases, messengers from the other world. In medieval Europe, however, cats were not so well regarded. During the Middle Ages, particularly in the 14th century, they were associated with witchcraft and the occult. Many people believed that witches had cats as their spiritual familiars, and that these animals were capable of seeing spirits and sensing death. This belief was so strong that, during the witch hunts, many cats, especially black ones, were sacrificed, as it was believed that they carried bad energy, or even that they were transformed witches. Ironically, this persecution of cats may have contributed to the spread of the Black Death, as the decline in the feline population allowed rats, the disease's main vectors, to proliferate unchecked. In the United States, there are stories that reinforce the idea that cats have a sixth sense. A famous case happened in the city of Charleston, South Carolina, in the 19th century. Legend has it that a woman named Eleanor Carter owned a black cat named Salem, who always seemed to predict tragedy. In 1863, just before a major storm hit the region, Salem began acting strangely, meowing incessantly and refusing to leave his owner's side. On the night of the disaster, Eleanor's house was struck by lightning and set on fire. Interestingly, Salem disappeared the next day and was never seen again, leading many to believe he was more than just a cat. Another account comes from Victorian England, where many believed that cats could predict death inside a house. It was common to hear stories of cats that, without apparent explanation, hid or became aggressive before a death. In 1892, in a small village near Manchester, a cat named Thomas experienced something inexplicable. Its owner, Margaret Hill, a 76-year-old widow, lived alone and was very attached to the animal. Witnesses said that in the days before his death, Thomas refused to leave his bedroom door, and on the exact night Margaret passed away, he let out a long meow and fled the house. A few days later, neighbors found the cat at the entrance to the cemetery where Margaret had been buried, as if it was waiting for its owner to return. Reports about cats predicting supernatural events continue to emerge over the centuries. In some cultures, cats are believed to see spirits and even serve as bridges between this world and the afterlife. There are beliefs that say that if a cat stares at an empty corner of the house for a long time, it may be because he is seeing something that humans cannot. Some traditions claim that cats absorb negative energies, protecting their owners from bad spiritual influences. Whether due to their heightened sensory abilities or a connection with something that science cannot yet explain, the fact is that cats have always been involved in a mystery that intrigues humanity. Throughout history, they have been considered divine, demonic, guardians and messengers. But regardless of everyone's beliefs, one thing is certain: cats are extraordinary beings, and perhaps they know much more about the invisible world than we imagine. In November 2016, in the city of Asheville, North Carolina, a man named Richard Malone experienced something he could never explain. He lived alone in an old house on Cedar Street, a quiet neighborhood, and his only companion was a black cat named Midnight. For 5 years, Midnight was a normal, affectionate and independent cat, with no strange behaviors. But something changed late that fall. Richard began to notice that Midnight became restless, especially at night. The cat stared intently at a specific corner of the living room, as if it was seeing something invisible. Sometimes he would arch his back and let out a low growl. Behavior Richard had never seen before, but the scariest moment happened on November 12th. At around 3 a.m., Richard woke up with Midnight lying on his chest, something unusual as the cat never slept in bed with him. The strangest thing was that Midnight was still, her eyes wide and her ears turned back, as if she were listening to something. That same night, Richard received a phone call that left him in shock. His older brother, Patrick, who lived more than 300 kilometers away, had died suddenly in his sleep. Estimated time of death? Just after 3 a.m. Richard could never forget the look on Midnight's face that night, and to this day he wonders if his cat knew what was about to happen. Another frightening report happened in October 2009 in a small town called Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Mary Thompson, a 79-year-old retiree, lived with her Siamese cat Daisy in a modest house on West Walnut Street. Daisy was always quiet and reserved, but she started acting strangely a few weeks before Mary's death. The cat began to follow her around the house obsessively, meowing incessantly whenever she sat down to rest. Daisy also stopped eating properly and started sleeping outside Mary's room every night. On October 17th, Mary's neighbor, Susan, was surprised that the elderly woman had not gone out to get the newspaper, as she did every morning. Worried, she knocked on the door several times but got no response. He called the police, who entered the house and found Mary lifeless in her armchair. The strangest detail? Daisy was lying next to her owner, motionless, as if in mourning. Paramedics estimated that Mary had passed away at around 4 a.m. from a heart attack. Another case that shocked a family happened in June 2018 in the city of Boise, Idaho. The Reynolds family has always been skeptical of supernatural stories until their cat Oliver began acting unusually before the death of the family's grandfather, Henry Reynolds. Oliver, a grey, short-haired cat, never showed much interest in the elderly man, preferring to stay in the kitchen or in the backyard. But in the days leading up to Henry's death, Oliver began to constantly approach him. On June 4th, while Henry was dozing in the living room armchair, Oliver climbed into his lap and stared at his face for several minutes, something he had never done before. During that night, Oliver refused to leave Henry's room, even when the family tried to get him out. The next day, Henry passed away in his sleep. The scariest thing happened later. On the following nights, Oliver would sit on the edge of the bed where Henry used to sleep and stare into space, as if he was waiting for something or someone. Stories like these continue to emerge in different parts of the world, and many people wonder if there is something that cats can sense before someone dies. Was it just a refined instinct, or do they really have access to something we can't see? Throughout this video, we explore true stories and intriguing accounts of cats that seem to predict death. From the famous case of Oscar the hospital cat in Rhode Island to the personal experiences of owners who swear they witnessed strange behavior in their felines before the loss of a loved one, cats continue to surprise us with their sensitivity. But do they really have a sixth sense, or can everything be explained by science? The answer depends on how each person sees the world. Whatever the explanation, one thing is certain. Cats are incredible animals and full of mysteries, right? They have accompanied humanity for thousands of years, inspire stories, challenge knowledge, and from time to time make us question the limits between the real and the supernatural. And now I want to hear from you. Which theory makes the most sense to you? Have you ever had any strange experiences with your cat? Tell me here in the comments, because I really want to know. And if you like this video, you already know, leave a like, subscribe for more content like this, and activate the bell so you don't miss anything. Oh, and don't leave without checking out the next video here on the channel. There's a lot of interesting stuff waiting for you.